well, we'll go ahead and call this to order. Go ahead and do roll call.
Mike Hanna, present.
Greg Gamble.
Dan Maddox.
Dave Cravens.
Steve Denny.
All right, well, we'll move on to election of officers. Do we have a document?
Let's go ahead and start there.
Okay.
Because they have proceedings too. They're gonna do roll call and that's, you don't have to.
They
do
don't need
anything
to
else.
elect.
Okay. Okay. All right, so go ahead and call your meeting.
Good evening. We'll go ahead and call the Pendleton Planning Commission meeting in order. Everybody is here except for Kyle Eichhorn. We do have a quorum. So this is a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the RDC. Thank you.
No, that's good.
Okay.
Because it's not.
Okay, so this is my first run doing the election of officers. So I'm serving as president this year, correct?
So,
If you want to.
yeah,
I do.
I do.
I'm happy to take a motion.
I believe you have to be nominated.
Yeah, so somebody has to nominate
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I'm
So
a-
20 seconds.
yeah, generally what we do is the attorney runs the election, all right? So,
On to you then.
Yeah, so are there any nominations for president?
I make a motion that we nominate Dan Maddox for president.
I'll second that.
Second. Is there anybody else that would like to be president? Okay, so that's closed, and now just a voice call, please.
All in favor? Aye. Oh,
You have to do 5%, so
gotcha.
Greg Campbell, aye. Dave Cravens, aye.
Steve Denny, aye.
Dan Maddox, aye.
all right, and then now vice president, are there any nominations for vice president?
I might nominate Steve Denny.
Oh, no.
Can you reach
Thank you,
out?
thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Let's not have a second to that one.
Oh, I'll second.
Okay. I nominate Craig Campbell.
It's a runoff.
Is there a second for Craig Campbell?
you can refuse.
Well, I'll second that.
Okay. All right, so now instead of a yes or no, do you refuse the nomination?
Yes, I respectfully
Okay,
decline.
so therefore we have one nomination for Craig. So Mike, your name?
Can I vote on that?
Mike's not
Oh,
voting.
I'm sorry. Okay, Craig, your name?
Yay.
Dan,
Yay.
Dave?
Yay.
Steve?
Yeah,
All right, and then you have to nominate and a secretary as well for the body. That does not need to be a member of the body.
I nominate Dave Cravens as secretary.
Typically, it's staff, right?
No, it's
No?
Lynn.
We've never had a secretary. Oh, it's Lynn right now, yeah. Yeah, we-
Well, nominate
She's
Lynn.
not present.
Yeah, heck yeah, you can.
That's what you get.
Yes.
Let's go.
That's what she gets.
Yeah, you're not.
Can't
Okay.
defend yourself.
Right, well, Lynn.
So,
I would like to restate my previous statement and say I nominate Lynn Mellinger.
I'll second that.
okay. No other nominations? Craig,
Yay.
Dan,
Yay.
Dave, Steve,
Yes,
all right, elections are done.
that was exciting.
Congratulations.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Gotta let Lynn know.
We will. All right, well, we'll have the minutes here to review. Any comments or questions regarding the minutes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve of the minutes as written from the last meeting.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. New business. I think Scott has an update for us here regarding the Heritage Park North JDK Kids project.
Okay, we've got some slides for this. Does it get the overview?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here,
Is there one that,
so that's the
Shows-
flat, and then there's the.
yeah,
site
the
plan.
aerial photo? Oh, we don't have an aerial photo. Okay, let's go to the site plan then.
So the second page.
Okay, today we're gonna bring you up to speed on a project that is in the early stages, and it looks like it'll involve creating a TIF, a specific TIF for this project. So the project location is at the roundabout, so Heritage Way North. So as you come out of town, the first roundabout, there's a stub to the north. And of course, to the south is South Heritage Way, and it's mislabeled West State Road 38, but it's State Street. This is the developers. We've got to correct him on that, make sure he knows where he's at. But anyway, so State Street, Heritage Way North, it's about 70 some odd acres. And it's owned by JD Kidd, which is the Kilcarney family. They're out of Ohio, but they've owned this property for several years now, waiting for the right opportunity and for Pendleton to not, I don't want to say mature, but get closer to expansion and growth. We're waiting for the right marketing time. So they have come before the town and to look at this, and internally the team's town so far until to get it ready to present eventually to the RDC. And this will be of interest to the Planning Commission too, is a TIF proposal. And it is not a standard TIF, just as a reminder that a normal TIF project in the original way, the OG, right? Is that the right term? The original way, and was done for decades in Indiana and other states, is you have an undeveloped area and it's not developing because you don't have infrastructure out there. You don't have water, sewer, roads, or any of their combination of it is missing, right? And so to be able to fund, especially roads, which are the most expensive, or to run sewer and water out to a location, the concept of TIF, tax increment financing, was developed. And basically what it says is that you can look at what the current assessed value of that property or properties is, and then you can take the increased in the assessed value and the extra tax that would bring in if that was a developed property. In other words, it has a road, sewer, water, utilities, and it starts to get developed. So the assessed value can, drastically go up. And then what a town or city would do, or a county would, they would take a bond out on that anticipated revenue. And let's say they had to build a road and the utilities and all came to $10 million. So you would get a bond for $10 million, 25, 30 years, you would pay it off using that TIF revenue. Well, of course, one of the dangers when you do that, what puts the town at risk is, what if all of a sudden it's 2008, everything comes to a standstill, there's no development, but the town had already put the road and utilities in, well, they got to start paying off that bond, right? That's the extreme situation on the negative. Of course, on the positive is right away, it starts getting developed, tax revenue goes up, town gets to capture all that. Schools don't necessarily like it sometimes, especially if it's residential, because school population is going up, but they're not able to capture that tax revenue increase because that goes to the local city or town or county, who's ever doing that. So the town, we tend to stay away from, we've never done a residential. This may be sort of an odd hybrid example of that, but you'll get to it. We'll get to that in a second. So anyway, that's the normal way it has gone. In the recent handful of last few years, somebody with an innovative mind came up with the idea of sort of flipping that. And the way it works is, the positive part, it takes that risk away from the town, is basically the developer would go in and using their dollars, put in the infrastructure, the road, sewer, water, and then have a kind of deal that for that 25 years with that TIF revenue, then they would get a cut of that revenue to pay back for their investment on that road and infrastructure. So that is what JD Kids have proposed to the town of Pendleton. So we have, our bond counsel is Tom Pittman out of Barnes. And then the Reedy Group is our municipal financial advisor on this project. And we were in the early stages. And right now, what they have proposed is they would build the road. As you can see here, that's coming from the stub off. There would be, I guess you could call it 2 other roads. That first branch that would go behind, see the BP under there, under the Roman numeral 1, and then off to the side, number 2. So it'd be the main trunk, and then those 2 legs running off. So as you know, the town's strategy for handling growth is we focus on quality of place, stay ahead of the growth, and don't go into debt. Okay, so this project, in a way, addresses that. We don't incentivize by policy, we don't want to incentivize growth, but we will incentivize anything that enhances quality of the town and amenities that we feel that the town needs. Well, one of the things that we need to handle the growth, which is step number 2, is stay ahead of the growth, is there are certain roads that we have on our thoroughfare plan that are important to get into place as early as we can, because our current infrastructure is, for instance, State Street here downtown is jammed up already at a population of 6,000. So remember, our total population potential is 40,000. So the earlier we can get something like this in place, the better off we're going to be when that growth starts to go up. So this is why we're looking at this seriously, because it meets our growth strategies. Yes, it'll bring population in and more traffic, but for the amount of traffic relief that this road will bring eventually when it does connect to 132 is going to be very important. They're proposing up front commercial retail. Phases 2 and 3 are multifamily, and then up there are 4 and 5 and 6 are light industrial, technology, advanced manufacturing, those sorts of things. No smokestacks, minimal semis. We wanted to get this in front of you. Dan has been participating in a lot of these meetings because we don't want to just surprise you with it, because it's a complicated thing. It's especially if you've never been through this type of structure. And like I said, it's fairly new. And we're very early on. We're in negotiations with what the split is with them, as far as they proposed 90-10. We said no, and we countered with 70-30 on the tax revenue coming in once it does happen. Tax increment revenue as it comes in.
They wanted 90 them, 10 us.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, right. That's what I said.
Crazy.
So what we're trying to do is draw out. So Reedy Group has run the numbers. I don't want to say it, but we know what we think is a break-even point, the fair point. And we're trying to draw out of them. We're like, you got to prove that 90-10 is not a windfall. I told them up front that we want this to be financially healthy for you, because the town is motivated for it to be, because we want it to be successful, because we need this road. It's not a want, it's a need. And but you can't have a windfall. But yeah, we want to find the right midpoint where it's healthy for both parties.
And this is a boulevard. Huge.
Yeah, this is it's a 4-lane boulevard. And then once that's completed, there is only one parcel north of that if it develops, that's how we'll connect to 132. And this is not a bypass around the town. I'd like to call it, or not a bypass. It's a relief valve. we think the way the traffic will flow, once this is in place, that needs to go north of town. Most of the time, when it's non-rush hour traffic, they'll come through town. It's easier, it's prettier or whatever. When traffic starts to back up, some of that traffic that wants to go north to the north part of town will peel off and go up that way. So it's not a bypass where everything will always try to avoid downtown, which we don't want. We want the businesses to be healthy and a lot of vitality downtown. So we think this will give us, this will be important for as the traffic count increases in town. Dan, did you want to add anything?
And I think maybe one clarification, I think it was just, you
Sure.
misspoke. 1 and 2 will be commercial. 3 and 4 will be
Oh,
residential.
did I say it backward?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm sorry.
One's multi-family, one's townhomes.
3 is a townhomes, and I think 4 is multifamily.
And remember, that doesn't go all the way.
Yeah, if you could scroll down a little bit just to show that.
There's a whole nother field above there to get to 132.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be a
You'll see it
year,
on
it
the
could be
next
10
map.
years. That develops.
Yeah.
Is it on
Get
the
to
next?
132.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to
It's on
scroll
the
down?
I-69 plan, you can see where
The
his
quadrant
property
map
line
shows it.
stops and then where it gets to 132.
Can you scroll down?
I think just another point with the.
Oh,
road is-
I didn't know we had this. Okay,
Yeah, this is for my,
yeah.
is that.
Could you scroll in just a little bit on that?
Zoom in?
Yeah, zoom in just a bit.
Sure.
So this is the,
Thank you.
this is the property that we're talking about right here. You can see this is the road. There's one more property, parcel here, and then it would connect to 132, and then further on, this would be the critical point to get to here, and then to enhance it, we would eventually connect, not probably with this exact alignment, but it would be connected up to 600 south.
The stop, make sure they understand that parcel stops, that red rectangle.
Yes,
Yes,
right here,
it's just the first.
right here is
line.
the north boundary, and it's
It's
just
the
this
north boundary of that
parcel
development.
that we're talking about. This is Wolfie's right here. This is the Masonic
Masonic
Lodge right here.
Who owns the Whitaker, former Whitaker property where the lake is? That was Whitaker's back in the day,
I don't know.
behind Subway.
I talked to someone about it.
And
and I
this
can't
sold to,
I can't
Buck.
recall. Is it Bucks?
yeah,
Brandon Buck?
everybody wanted.
No, Brandon is down here, right? He is,
Behind
Uh,
Subway.
Behind
no,
Subway.
this is Brandon right here.
They're talking about on the right side.
This is Brandon here. Are
Right.
you talking about up here?
No, no,
No,
no, the one with the
Oh,
lake.
The
I'm
lake.
sorry.
Hey,
was
Scott,
formerly,
Scott, while I got you up
Whitaker
here,
property.
where'd you say the Masonic Lodge is?
Just right here. This is State
Where the
Street.
word state is.
This
Okay.
is Wolfie's right here,
Okay,
which is cut out of this parcel.
okay,
Used to be the,
Old trail.
Mhm.
Yeah.
so it's just, this parcel is the JD Kids. Okay, so
Okay.
this is the only parcel, there's only one parcel involved in this TIF project.
Actually, that road probably should be a little more straight.
Yeah,
Till
We have it
till
going-
it exits that,
straight through the property.
but that.
and
It's
where
on the
is, you
straight,
didn't call it a
so-
bypass, but where is this road that is going to be at?
So this is the road with its general alignment. It'll eventually connect up to 132,
Mhm.
right? If this property develops, then we'll have this road put in place. Then what that does is it will give us Carrot Glen property, a way to get to the north part of town without having to go through the middle of town, right? And then eventually, if this develops into a subdivision, we'll probably have a major thoroughfare or major throughway that will connect the 600 south up here. It won't we're not saying it'll necessarily go through those existing homes, but it'll be done in a way that when that is developed as a residential property. Have a, what would we call it, collector, local collector.
Be either a secondary or a collector.
But there would be access from this point to 600 south.
And I can say too, if you want to just talk about the road itself, that typically we would only require a 2-lane road. The right of way would be dedicated for a 4-lane. But as this is going in almost preemptively and putting in 4 lanes, which I think benefits the town, because 10 years from now, we don't have to go in and pay extra money to put in more lanes as we have more traffic. So it's almost dealing with what we know is coming. At, you know, prices could either skyrocket or plummet in 10 years, but probably inflate a little. So it's almost like getting it done all in one place.
And you talked about the 70-30 from the TIF money that would come in. They want set, if whatever that number is, the benefit that the town would normally get, they want some of that to build that road.
Right, so they would get 70%, we get 30. That's what we proposed.
Just for them to build the road.
It's in, yes, it's in exchange for basically them.
But then that 70% would go on for the remainder of the TIF
25
years.
Right. And we're just,
Does that happen normally with other communities? I've never heard of that.
It's a thing that's just happened in the last few years. The beauty of it for the town is that, for example, the old way, the traditional way it's being done, is the town was at risk because if the development didn't happen for either the developer couldn't get his act together and things just didn't happen, or the economy slowed down to the point where nothing's selling, nothing's moving, then the town put in that road, the town has a bond, so we're having to make payments, but yet the TIF revenue is not coming in or is not sufficient to make that payment. This structure came about because it shifts that risk away from the town and puts it on the developer, right? So the town would still get revenue, and right now it's somewhere between the 30 to 10% for the 25 years. And then eventually we would start getting 100% if there was any time left on that TIF, which probably wasn't.
Does it cover any of the infrastructure, the sanitation,
he's got-
drainage,
yeah, he's
water,
got to put all that.
all that in?
What about the maintenance of the road over the years? Is that's on the town?
It would become the town's as soon as it's complete. We would maintain. But that's true of either the old traditional way or this new structure. We're not the first to do this.
Oh,
There's a couple of them that, I mean, it's been going on for a couple of years. It's fairly new. But in both cases, it would be a town road.
who else is it? Do you know the communities offhand that have done it?
Now, Reedy.
I know Carmel's done it.
Who's done it?
There's been multifamily projects on the north side of Indianapolis that have used this past.
Sounds like a smarter way of doing it.
Yeah,
It's somewhat akin to a tax abatement.
it is. It's a cousin, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the, and I understand the thinking behind it, but again, we aren't bringing in enough TIF money right now. The RDC doesn't have enough TIF money to really go out and do anything we want to do. And so to hamstring us, 30% may be a whole lot of money. I don't know what that's going to end up being, but again, we're not bringing in much TIF money for the RDC to
Yeah, so
develop the town.
so the old way, the original way that these were structured, the town wouldn't have, they would be paying off the bond. So they would never have excess revenue anyway for 25 years. That's the other thing that's positive about for the town is whether it ends up being 30% or 10%, that's excess revenue coming to the town that if we did it the old way, we wouldn't see it.
True.
So, do they have potential to make more money on this? Yes, but they're also taking more risk. They don't know what the economy's gonna do. They don't know how fast it will develop. They're dependent on people coming in and, either buying some of the property up and developing it, or they leasing it.
They've obviously seen the same population numbers that we see.
Yes.
They're seeing 40,000 people.
They've sat on this, at least, is it 10 years?
I think they've had it for more. His dad started it. And
They've tried to contact several companies to market this land. They've had issues with people coming in wanting to market it. A couple of companies I work with, they've contacted and there wasn't enough information at that point that they wanted to take it and carry it on. And your infrastructure cost is not gonna go down. You're talking about sanitation, water, drainage, roadage.
yeah.
It's not gonna get any cheaper.
So anyway, I just want to get this type of structure in front of you, so if you have questions and you know, noodle on it.
Yeah.
Over time.
I've had the benefit of having 2 meetings, so it's, had a little bit of time to, absorb some of it. You guys, how long have the conversations been going on?
Oh,
We brought you in pretty early.
Okay.
I mean, I forget what your first.
I think he's been talking about this since.
He's been talking to us for a long time,
Sure.
but he hasn't presented this
Yeah,
model
yeah.
until recently.
Just from my perspective, I think there's a couple risks that we need to be mindful of. And the biggest one is just execution risk. Can he pull it off? Does he have financing in place? Because that's really, I put it on my banker hat and think about, okay, how am I financing this as the lender? Because I'm going to be looking at the TIF revenue as the source of repayment. And that thing that I think is a challenge on this project is the way the phasing works, because the phasing of the project starts with a gas station, as opposed to a large multifamily project that's much easier to underwrite and say, hey, if we know we build a 200-unit multifamily project, we know roughly what we think we can lease this up for. We know with pretty good certainty what the tax revenue is going to be. On some of the things they propose, I think we're going to have a hard time understanding what that's going to be. So maybe not as big of a deal for us, but a bigger deal for him in figuring out how he's going to finance all this thing. And for us, I think that's the risk, is making sure that when we embark on something like this, that he has the capacity to pull it off.
So he is building the road up front with what he says is cash on hand, so. We're going through the due
Yeah.
diligence.
I think those are just all things that we're going to want to verify
Yep.
and understand and underwrite him. Yeah.
It looks like to me, when he brought that to us originally, there was a lot less housing and a lot more light industrial. And I'm just wondering, does that make a difference in what he needs to do to make this work, or?
So far where we're at right now, they're still separate from the deal. They still have to, what's left, platting.
Well, they have to plat, but they also, if they're changing up the acreage on their allotted zones, they'll have to come back to planning commission like they did to amend the general business acreage. So they'll have to do that, and they will have to secondary plat it because the parcels have already been primary platted, which came through you guys last year at some point, I think.
So I'm just wondering, if that
phase 4,
if that change to make that happen is essential for them to make this feasible for their,
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because it's a more known factor.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, or is it, if we would not approve that for some reason, a part of this.
Yeah, we should definitely bring that up. Numbers.
They were pretty confident a year ago that apartments, multifamily would go relatively quick. They were
Yeah.
actually hotter on that than they were.
The industrial.
Outlaws out front.
Yeah.
There's a much greater speculative, I believe there's much greater speculative know-how into the commercial stuff as opposed to the housing. I mean, I think that's much easier to extract, like what we think will happen.
I think they're gonna turn it over to the developer for the house.
I think so too.
They'll probably sell those outlots, retail outlots.
Yeah, they're in the process of it. That's getting to a pretty mature stage. What would you classify?
They haven't gotten to site review. I think that the owner of the VP parcel is waiting until this TIF stuff is figured out to know whether or not they have to put in roads or will be reimbursed by Shree.
I think Brad had a question.
I don't remember the other entrance to the east of the roundabout. It looks like you're infusing, I'm sorry,
There's a right in, right out.
That's fine.
looks like you're infusing a potential traffic flow issue with traffic coming in and out of the roundabout and
It's a
people
right
trying
in,
to
right
cross.
Yeah, good,
It's a
good catch,
right
but it
in.
doesn't show it. That's a right in, right out.
That was on a
That was on the plat,
flat, we approved. Okay, right in, right out.
because they did want a full motion local road there. We told them that was not safe, it was too close to the intersection.
So that has not changed.
Yep. Yep, it's still a right in, right out, and they have options on how to construct that, but it's just not sure.
I also thought we had some barriers on the eastern edges of the property to protect the existing homeowners and to
Yeah.
the north, northeast.
Yeah.
I don't see those. If you were to slide up in the slide, it looks
This-
like they have
yeah.
pushed the commercial development all the way out without the berms and shielding.
That
This
drawing
is
may
just
not
the
be
concept,
detailed
this
enough,
is
right?
not approved,
Okay.
this is not what they'll be, I mean, they're gonna have to go through secondary and site planning for each part of this, as they have, stated they wanna phase it in. So whether that's by lot or it's by block, they have the ability to do either, they'll have to do that as they move north. So all those things will be addressed that were within the zoning conditions and the planning conditions. And they'll have to adhere by that. So this is just a rough drawing of what kind of uses they would have and what the roadway down the center would look like.
Yeah, the draft language does not, this deal does not exempt it from any.
And we've asked them to put some language in there that this is merely conceptual.
So we don't have an accurate count on the number of multi-family housing units and the density and.
They have their predictions.
Yeah, I think
on
in
that,
phase 3, there's 140 single-story rental units proposed, and phase 4 is 200 traditional 3-story garden-style apartments.
So when they go to site review for this, since this would be, it wouldn't be a secondary plat, 'cause it's all one parcel. We would go through and make sure their densities are correct. If it ends up being less than that, then that's what they have to do.
And that's also where we would pick up the green space requirements for the multifamily housing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
Same
doesn't,
with any of these
this
lots.
is this does not relieve them of any obligation.
The
Follow-up
UDO
question, where are we on getting the, I'll call it the gateway standards in place to?
Well, we've got a potential consultant working up a proposal for us, but we did have a pretty productive meeting.
Is the RDC aware of what we've requested?
No.
The planning commission?
No. What is that?
Well, we want to get done with this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm bringing it up because this is a
Those front
huge
outlots.
section, all the front outlots are being teed up for development, and that'll be yet another section of the gateways in and out of the city that don't have a higher level of standards for development.
We had asked Hannah over the winter to school down this. We were concerned that going forward, 4 major roads come into town. And we didn't want to lose control of the architecture of what happened on those 4 roads as far as good examples, Dollar Tree and Dollar General. We got different buildings, different colors. We wanted a more uniform flow of what's downtown, more of the brick, the old town, historic town. Try to get some control over that, so.
It's a gateway overlay that is essentially an extra
sorry.
layer of architecture standards
On main thoroughfares.
on main
Yes.
thoroughfares coming in.
Makes sense.
And that is Highway 13, M38 to the I-69 corridor, 69 corridor in State Street, all the way through town, and then the entire 67, 9, 36, 38 channels through town. Those are the areas that we wanted covered with this expanded program.
I think that's a great idea, but are we saying that these potential properties would not be covered under the current UDO?
No, No, they would. It's just they would only have to meet those architecture standards.
That
As they
exists-
are
that
now.
exists today.
Their
As they
standards, not the new
We
ones.
haven't adopted any changes yet.
So the UDO is in place. It's been in place now for 3 years. This is where, what we want to do is
We
Go to
update
the
the
next
UDO almost
step.
every meeting.
What is that?
Unified Development Ordinance.
Okay. Okay.
257 pages. Basically the Bible of all standards, what you want to build or develop.
Yeah.
so
It's
anti-monotony.
it's an excellent document, but you all are planning on adding to it?
We actually every meeting, corrections, additions. But this is 10 foot, we make it 12 foot, or it's 30 feet, we make it 40 feet, or
Thank you for doing
we add bushes, we add mounds, we add fencing, we change this, that.
it. Cool.
It's so big, it got so confusing.
And the
You got so many
cost
different,
Yeah.
so many different
It's
zonings.
The old ordinance is contradicted to each other. That's why it's called uniform development ordinance. Basically, it's to prevent, it's anti-monotony, enhances the quality and aesthetics, so that you don't have cookie cutters, you don't have homes that have a wall, with no windows, same vinyl siding.
So this overlay would essentially be kind of another chapter
Layer of
of
that.
that.
We find every builder comes in there. Let's build it.
I'm sure.
But
We've
it
sent
makes
every
sense.
one of them back, proudly, we've sent everyone back to the chalkboard.
Send everyone back.
It makes
Yeah.
it easier for staff too, because they can
Oh, gosh,
just
yeah.
reference that to these developers.
Right.
And some can be pushy, so
I-
they can just point back to this document.
I guess on a common sense level, that standard should be, what standard do you want to apply towards? Do you want a Cordsville? Do you want a Carmel? Do you want Kokomo? Do you want Whitestown? Not to make it so high, but it's unreasonable, but not too low, where you don't meet a standard.
That's
It
what we're
has to
trying
be
to get.
something, because you
Right.
take construction prices from $200 a square foot to $450 a square foot, and then you're not gonna get the development. And you have parcel pieces that are underdeveloped, and you're not gonna reach your goal to meet your needs. When you read, I've read this probably 10 times, the interchange program, there's a need in there about what retail, what housing you need, what single housing you need to meet the needs and the services that we're not getting in the community. So somewhere it has to be a common sense,
Yeah.
but also a standard.
Right,
But what is that standard?
right. What does that look like?
Yeah, and it's gotta be somewhere with some common sense.
I can't think of a better way to transition into the next new business.
You mentioned the I-69.
Yeah. Any other questions on?
One comment that we've talked to the school board is apartments opposed to houses.
Uh-huh.
With apartments, those numbers, student numbers fluctuate.
Mhm.
And now they have a student count in the fall and one in the spring. And Mark has said many times that with a lot of the influx of apartments, those numbers really fluctuate. They're not as consistent as homes.
Mhm.
And one study that we've done the last year and a half, we came in here, did a forecast, it was very accurate. And he estimated his numbers was 0.5 students per house. And he did that same study in Anderson and Lapel, and he was just right on. Very
Way
accurate,
down.
but
Way down.
or down a little bit, maybe consistent, but it always comes up about homes opposed to apartments.
Yeah.
And student count.
I do think with this particular property, I know Sri has talked about kind of some all levels of life living. So some of these might be really geared towards, ranch style for an older generation, where they might be condos that they even own, they're just attached. So that's kind of something that has been discussed in this. That's still, super valid point. But I think he is kind of looking into not just typical, at least in one part of it, the typical kind of apartment. Home.
That was just
Which is
hard
a
for,
neat-
that was
yeah.
just hard for them to plan.
Yeah,
Well, shall we move on? Yeah. All right, let's do it. I-69 interchange master plan.
yes, so I have called this special meeting together because the planning department and the planning commission have been talking about this certain quadrant in the I-69 plan. So were all of you on the board when this plan was built, developed, familiar with kind of what it is?
I wasn't, but I'm familiar.
Okay,
I familiarized
familiar with it
myself
now.
with it, yeah.
Okay, so this is essentially a plan for the 4 quadrants of the I-69 interchange. So the southwest quadrant here is mostly residential, and the way that that's described, if you would go to the second slide, this is the page from the I-69 plan. It's mostly described as executive style, single family housing. And then you have the brown area, which is the southern part of the Keystone. It's supposed to be just kind of a general retail commercial use in that area. There's already Bay Welker and Mystic Waters up there. So filling in kind of those gaps. But what I wanted to discuss with you guys is that the language in this description is quite limited as to what kind of uses as far as housing or residential is in this quadrant. And I've talked with some people who are on the steering commission, kind of looked back at some of the notes, and I don't think it was necessarily meant to be as restrictive as it turned out to be. And we're also finding that just as far as market interest goes, $500,000 to $1 million executive homes are not going to go along a highway, especially kind of in that U-bend area. So what I would like to do is discuss the possibility of adding in that yellow blob, essentially, in that descriptive language, Middleton, mixing in townhomes, condos, multifamily, and single family. So the people that I've talked to, including the prior planning director, said the idea was supposed to be denser uses towards the highway, and then getting less dense and lighter as you move towards 600 Foster's Branch, things like that. We're certainly not discouraging, if the builder wants to come in and build those kinds of homes, that's terrific. It's just, it kind of pigeonholes the owners in that area as far as development goes. So that's kind of part one of what I wanted to discuss, and then I'll move on to the red blob here. But I think as far as having uses near a highway, it is appropriate to have some denser style housing, and we can have some on the other side of the highway. Mr. Kulkarni will have some here on his property. It's a pretty typical use. It doesn't mean it's going to be any less quality. It has to fit all of our standards, our density standards, open space requirements. Some things in this quadrant too also speak to centralized stormwater, parks, trails, things like that. So it's not necessarily changing anything in that regard. It's just, I think we need to open up as far as, residential uses there go, because when the planning commission sees a rezone, right now, if it were to be something for multifamily anywhere in this yellow blob, there's not really any justification in the plan to allow them to do that other than it's housing. So that's kind of what I want to start with is that. And so any comments from you guys too? And I think a few of you in here were on the steering committee for this plan. I wasn't here when it was built. So if you have any comments from that, you can speak to that too.
Currently, to the northwest corner where it's green, we've got preliminary deeds with DR built.
Oh,
We're probably relatively, this area right through here, down to that property line, and up. We're very close to having that approved for residential homes.
It's both of those properties.
They've come to the table. This whole corridor along here is going to be down. That's going to be executive homes, it's a limited drive. Now it's blocked from the other homes, so keep the woods. The other homes will come in off 38, come all the way down to that bottom partial there. This property over here, that's where the junkyard wanted to go that we thought. We've turned down 4 warehouses in here out of Texas. The owner of that property, like Hannah says, was all the way down to the interstate. Has never been contacted by a builder since he's owned it of any kind, whether it's an arbor, track home, or a $1 million home builder. We all pretty much agree that nobody in $1 million home wants to look back up the interstate. So, in saying all that, with that residential development label on there, it's kind of tough for us to get around that. We probably, like I said, this is probably going to be retail out here. We do have some interest in that with this Gaines property. They're working pretty hard with the retail out there, probably a box grocery store. What goes in the middle could be more like that light manufacturing up on the Kilcarney property. That could be townhomes, apartments, etc., like Hannah said down on the bottom.
That's the way it's written, isn't it?
No, if you go to the description, on the next page, it says, this area shows market traction for executive style single family homes.
Back away from the interstate, but out at the interstate could be anything.
Well, if you look at the description and then look at where it says that's supposed to go, it does go all the way up to the interstate, save for the little, trail park.
I was always under the impression that the executive homes would be back by the woods where everybody wants them.
Mhm.
Out by the interstate would be townhomes or apartments or condos or whatever. So,
And I think that's appropriate.
yeah,
We just need to add that language in there.
put it in there.
To allow that.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
I thought it was in there,
Maybe,
right?
where's the other slide? Yeah, I had the red.
Oh, now, yeah, so I'm gonna talk about the red blob later.
The center is gonna be the tough thing. Whatever happens in that center is gonna be the hard part to fill in. Light manufacturing, the light warehouse. So we call the yellow residential, we put another color in there for light industrial or
Let me get the
future development, you know, map.
red description.
Okay.
I got you
How many
covered.
lots is DR Horton proposed?
200. 11 executive and 189.
So if we're all kind of on the same page about that, I can write up a description, and then planning commission on their meeting on the 7th would go to vote to amend this plan.
But one thing that concerns me is we're taking each of the quadrants and putting semi-traffic in it. I know it's quantified here as light semi-use, but we're gonna have light industrial in the northeast quadrant. We already have warehousing and industrial in the southeast quadrant. Now we're gonna potentially open it up here. 3 of the 4 quadrants, that intersection, are gonna have semi-traffic into it. And that's my only concern, because semi-traffic is not conducive for retail development. It's not conducive for residential development. It's disruptive to multifamily developments. So I think we just have to be very careful there that, we want to make all 4 quadrants light industrial with warehousing and truck traffic into all 4, we make that decision. But if we're trying to get this developed, my only caution is truck traffic.
I think the thing to keep in mind with all of this is, and this is the toughest nut to crack for the entire I-69 project. The residential housing, the small commercial stuff was all based on being able to pull in a large high-tech or whatever, medical, whatever company that you didn't have to drive to work. You could walk to work because you lived right there. Are we marketing this area for that to anyone? To put an anchor in there to then say, okay, now if we have that, because I too would be concerned about semis if I was buying a home out there. If we have an anchor that can bring in people who want to live there and work there, then you can develop it. That was the whole emphasis for this plan was that anchor.
I guess the question I would ask, looking at the roles and responsibilities, the plan commission versus the RDC, is who should be soliciting the types of development that we would like in those areas?
That's a good question.
Well, that's an economic development commission.
So can I go back to what the town is, and I don't mean the town like Ann and Scott needs stuff. It is the strategy for growth is not to incentivize population growth, but to incentivize quality. Right? So everybody wants to fall back to the traditional habit model of economic development. We are not doing economic development.
But
We're
the
doing-
state is.
We're doing community development, a whole different twist. And thank God we're in the type of situation where we can do that. For Anderson, Ingalls to some extent, Elwood, they're in a desperate situation where they need to do economic development. We are into a community development situation. So we can put in this quadrant whatever we want or need to enhance the quality of the town. But you also got to balance that against the reality of what is the market going to accept. Most of the stuff where we're saying there, we could put the light industrial, it's not that conducive to residential other than multifamily. The market's just, they're not going to do it. Now, if you want nothing but residential there, then you're also going to have a density issue and a population jump. All you're doing is incentivizing population growth.
No, I don't think we'd ever get the right kind of homes down long we want.
Right.
I hate to say that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what, yeah, I was getting to that. So thank you.
So 2 points, Craig, the Keystone District, I believe when this was passed, the development search incentive type thing would not happen until our population hit 20,000.
Right, the brown blob.
Yes.
And the main reason behind that, and we all need to be reminded, don't want two downtowns.
Correct.
And if you have two downtowns too early, it kills the historic downtown.
Right. But I can see your argument, chicken or the egg. Do we bring these people and they bring 20,000 people with them? Or do we wait till our population is 20,000 and then we incentivize Google to come here, you know? I think you could do it either way, but I think we're probably sticking with waiting till the population is a little bigger to support.
And that, I think that's, and you're absolutely right. That's the way it was written. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid we're gonna go down the path of piecemealing this with, okay, we'll allow it, as Brad said, a light industrial here, a light industrial there, a light, and pretty soon
Well,
throw the plan out because who wants to live where you got a semi?
so I had to go to the rest of it. I missed what Anna said in the beginning. This quadrant, did you talk about what Rachel said?
Yeah.
Okay, so Rachel felt that what was put in there was not what she wanted in there. And I distinctly, this is when I first got here, I distinctly said, the way this is laid out will not work. And there was a heated debate with our consultant, Rachel, and myself. And I said, look, along that, nobody's gonna wanna put residents along the I-69 on the inside of that curve. That's just not gonna work. And nobody's gonna want the market will not allow executive homes in anywhere around there. So it's essentially, in a way, make it simple, what got it put into the plan we're saying is probably a mistake.
Yeah.
Because the market has proven that nobody wants it. And so what can we put in there that the market will accept and is good for the town?
So they had come to the conclusion adding the townhomes and multifamily is a good idea. So I guess I'd like to kind of move on to what a lot of folks have been alluding to is kind of that particular curve along 69, the red blob. All right. So looking at potentially allowing some other uses that are heavier along the highway instead of, just, a heavier multifamily or a heavier townhouse, something like that. Of course, it potentially could go there. But looking at a very small kind of flexible area for something that's not super heavy. So I know, looking at industrial R&D and light manufacturing, looking at that these days, they might not even have semis. And I think also, you can add office, flex space, hotels, things that are a little heavier than what is in the brown, kind of your typical commercial retail area. So I looked at exit 210 because I believe the Saxony Village was something that was referenced as far as the residential styles in this area, where there's heavier along the highway and then it gets less dense as you move back. But if you look at Saxony Village, there's a hospital along the highway and then a bunch of open space. And there are some businesses on the other side of the highway. I listed a few here, and these are not semi-heavy. But what I would like to discuss is if there is potential in that red area for some things that aren't just a restaurant and aren't just a multifamily, what could those be? And I think the planning commission, if that's written into this plan, that could be some offices, that could be a headquarters even, if you want, or even some light manufacturing. They have the ability to then determine if it's too heavy or it's got too much traffic or it's not good fit there. But if it is something really unique and really well placed there, they have the ability to rezone part of the property. So that's something that I've brought up a few times that we've discussed, but just kind of wanted to get your thoughts with the planning commission here. Again, it could be multifamily housing, but if someone with offices wanted to go in here, I see that as a potentially pretty good place. Do you have anything to add to that?
Where community hospital is one.
Yeah, community hospitals going in above Tractor Supply.
Yeah, on the other side.
How is that plotted through there?
Platted.
Yes.
There's 1, 2, 3 parcels. So it's Gaines property or Bond's property, and I think Filburn property. So really the I-69 corridor is only 2 properties that abut.
We take this very seriously when we consider any projects.
Right.
Because it's our plan, and we try to, and that's what we've run into is, so for so many years, the town did not have any guidelines at all, and everything was kind of a one-off decision. And we're really, when anything comes in and we have any kind of plans to compare it to, we take it very seriously. And like Tim said, we turn down projects that don't meet that, but we feel like we need to have a little bit more flexibility. It's a living document. Like we said, we're changing the UDO constantly to make corrections, to bring it more realistic with what's really happening. And we feel like it's a living document that we need to make adjustments to.
Yeah.
And this is really the first time we've come across something that just doesn't.
Yeah. So it's almost the same as with the addition of townhomes and multifamily. It just kind of gives them the ability. So if something comes in that's, deemed appropriate, that's not super heavy and isn't going to cause, major obstruction like the junkyard, they have something to base it off of to either, approve it or deny it.
And we want to be able to stick with it, because if we make one exception, then everyone's going to expect another exception.
I'm going to be my, I think it's definitely the digital, you have control over not having to I think that's been my work. I think it's important to build on 59, do not have it all look light industrial. I've often thought corporate headquarters or something like that with office space in that area that's tough to build. But I think we need to be really mindful of not opening it up so much that we'll have a hard time.
Yeah.
Even the businesses there on the bottom compared to Exit 10. You're right, you have to think about Saxony, the hospital itself, takes up all that acreage, it's all green space and roundabouts. We have very small roundabouts, some of them right there. And just off the Keystone District there, I think that's when we stop so many things. And I don't think it's that we are resistant. I just think we really want to be picky about what goes in and slaughtering and forward.
Well, and going back and recapping some of the things that we've dealt with, we had over 3 million square feet of warehousing being proposed in that quadrant, which would look much like the Mount Comfort 70 area, heavy traffic. Then we had 7,000 plus vehicles in an auto recycling operation that would have occupied a significant portion of that. So we've turned those down, trying to preserve the integrity of that whole quadrant.
The only way we were able to turn it down is because how the UDO was written.
Any developers, want to maximize their property, they're looking at their dollars per square foot and what they're maximizing, if it's office space, if it's industrial, whatever. And if you're not careful with housing, residential and certain things, you can end up with pieces undeveloped, and then you're gonna have vegetation growth and things like that. That's when the property's gonna sit there for a while and then you're gonna get growth there, and then it's not gonna look good from 69. I mean, you just gotta be careful because you end up with some dead space.
What I would imagine is this would be somewhat similar to like how Mr. Kulkarni is doing it, where the development would, in a way, there's a road that needs to go through here. That 146th Street extension, we're kind of working on a better route of that to serve these properties and not kind of cut through where it is, but essentially just redraw the line. But with that said, it is a kind of a secondarily important road, but building it in phases and only platting and rezoning it in phases, I don't think we would do kind of an all at once like we did with Mr. Kulkarni's property again. That was a learning curve. So, to that point, it would probably be farmed unless someone purchases it, plats it off and does a site plan or secondary plat. So we do kind of have that to our advantage, that we can piecemeal it together, but also kind of have an overarching idea of what it should look like.
Dave, as a developer, Dan as a banker, you think developers, potential people will come in and look at that map and see that quadrant says residential development, jump over it?
No, I think that me personally, I think if you got residential, it's hard to have industrial there, and you're still gonna have big trucks tearing up your infrastructure and your roads.
Or if you want to build this light manufacturing or lawnmower dealership or.
Something like that might work if it's
Well, I guess my point
platted, if
is,
it's platted off right in
that
the right
scary?
spot.
Does that scare you does that scare you when it says residential and you want to build tractor sales in there?
Depends on where where it's platted at and what
The
you're
whole
doing.
thing's- The whole thing's
Well,
yellow.
what you're doing to separate the housing,
No, wait a minute. That whole thing is yellow right now.
okay?
Yeah, the red is just a,
You pull that up on the internet and that whole blob is yellow. It says residential development. You're looking to build a tractor sales building. You gonna jump over to another corner?
I wouldn't, but it wouldn't put my business there.
Folks,
You
from
just
the,
never get the phone call.
from the
That's
start,
my point.
Yeah.
That's my point.
from the start of this,
So my point is, labeling it as a residential development is probably the wrong idea.
well, from the start of
It's the
this,
market thing.
Kimley Horn stated, this plan belongs to the town of Pendleton. It's
I
not
understand
Kimley
all that,
Horn's
yeah.
plan. And we can change it anytime we want. We can change it completely. We can throw it out and start all over. We can do whatever we want to it. I think this is probably a good, I have no problem with the planning commission saying, can we reword this? Because of what you've just stated. You folks are putting the guardrails on this to not allow what we just stated we were fearful of, I hope.
I'm
So I want us to be very cautious.
Trust me, we
Re-
are.
Rewording it is fine. I want us to be so cautious that we don't just throw it out and say, blow the doors open, let them come in.
I'm afraid we're missing opportunities.
Reword it, absolutely, do it.
I've got a big
I'm
comfort
afraid that
with.
developers
yeah.
and bankers and these people with a lot of money
Oh,
are
no.
looking at that, and they're coming in and seeing that,
I agree.
and they're jumping over to the other quadrant, or they go over there and see all this, they're going to exit 219 or 40 miles down the road.
Just so we keep the guardrails up.
I understand. You try to market that, I think it's the wrong way.
I think broadening the residential
Or we
term
need to have,
makes a
we
lot of
need to have
sense.
3 different colors in that box.
Yeah. I think the institutional box makes a lot of sense. I think the business makes a lot of sense. I think the industrial is where probably that line starts to get kind of blurry.
It goes back to what's the quality of life and what we're doing for our community.
Right.
That's the thing. And you're putting light industrial next to the community there. I think you're gonna have hard problem developing it personally.
Yeah. And I mean, if kind of adding some of those institutional and business potential uses that are just a slightly heavier than, again, the ground block, that's your restaurants or gas stations, stuff like that. If that's where we want to start, I think it's a great start in giving it some flexibility, and not pigeonholing it into just one type of thing. But also, the planning commission is, very cognizant of what,
I think it goes back to what Scott said. We want businesses there who really want to partner with the community
Right.
and be here.
right. So I'm thinking, but a hotelier is interested in this, I don't
Yeah.
think that's a necessarily inappropriate use.
I
of this
wouldn't either. I
area.
think that'd be a very appropriate spot for
Right.
that.
But right now, there's not really any ability to allow something like that. So with that said, these kind of first two uses, maybe leaving out the industrial for now, like, as, Carol said, this is a living document. We can change it as much as we want. If in 5 years we're finding that language isn't working, we can come back and look at it. But, the big part of this meeting was this zone needs to be a little bit more flexible. If that was the original intention, it's not what's written in the code. So that's kind of what we're aiming to do. So you guys, as far as, kind of the institutional, maybe some heavy business, kind of uses, start with that. And I think also that allows these owners here, as far as development goes, there might be some other ideas where they're able to market this. Someone else might come in that really wows us, that is a kind of different use, that would be appropriate. So I will make kind of a new description for this area, as well as, this is just a blob, but it would kind of indicate these are the areas where these heavier uses may be appropriate. It's not limited to that, if someone wants to go in right where that curve of that line is, if the planning commission finds it's okay, it's not going to disturb the potential future residential uses, they can do that. But there has to be some sort of findings of fact of how you rezone something. Plan is usually where we start. So what other comments do you guys have on that? Does that sound pretty kosher? This is what you'd be voting on the set. So I'll have that language description for you to review. I can also send it to you guys. I'll have it for their meeting. You're welcome to look at it, review it if you have any comments for me. But you'll be the one voting on updating the description and the law.
We've got to be careful because if a builder comes to town, they can meet the UDO pretty easily. We fight hand in hand.
And I think this would be part of our gateway.
MI, Harvard, final site, the cheap homes, we didn't want them. But they're right on the cusp. And approval through there. We gotta be careful with that as well, because someone can come in there, a lot of money. Losses now.
Actually have all the
Yeah.
also in the middle of the general office and the small like restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking around it.
Yeah.
So would that be able to be put in the?
Yeah. I think so.
If we change it, if we change it, right?
Yeah.
I think if
Correct.
people knew that was available,
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
because it would also,
I-
it would be a step from things that also be pleasing to the people that would live there.
Right.
Right, and there's a lot, I mean, that corner, the green corner, right,
Mhm.
and then, the,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, and I definitely think that those kind of village style kind of developments with the town owns multifamily and then some uses, you know, whether it's a doctor's office or a restaurant or whatever is really picking up speed with popularity. 'Cause people want to be able to walk places.
Younger folks.
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
they're not going to necessarily want to be in the historic area,
right.
but still have those amenities.
Just any old people have said that now.
We don't want
We
yards.
get a big enough gate.
We hate mowing lawns.
Yeah, they don't want to do it.
I hate it. I do it though, because my
Everybody
landlord
lies.
would yell at me if I did it.
And then they have kids
But-
that want that in-ground pool and that.
Who's your landlord?
Carol.
So.
I could mow the lawn, I would get a ticket from Brett and I would get a phone call from her.
So let me ask a question. How does your organization view the development of Pendleton? And what would you like to see with regards to preserving the standards, creating an image? Because, you know, like Dave pointed out, are you thinking Carmel? Are you talking Whitestown? Are you talking Fishers? What are your perspectives on this? Because as I already see,
They have the money.
well, I know.
No, we don't. No, we don't. We got beer money over here.
Barely.
Yeah.
No, the impact
I mean-
fees,
No, the impact fees go to a separate fund that's targeted for projects that were delineated in the study. Impact fee can only go to relieve traffic issues.
Extremely prescribed
Yeah, very
and
fair.
within a time frame.
And I would invite you guys, once we get a consultant under contract for that overlay, you know, invite you to be on the steering committee or some sort of, you know, board for that. So
Yeah.
that, oh, sorry.
And our perspective is, we have one shot making this right.
Right.
If you go up and down the I-69 corridor, you can see all the failed efforts. And, you know, we've had this debate, well, there's already some development here, you know, but we're already seeing that development on 67 and 9 and 36, 38, they're starting to scrape stuff. So that's one of the reasons why we're extending it into all the gateways into the community. And the key thing that we're pushing to accelerate this is that once you lose control of 38 State Street coming in from 13 into the historic district, and then if we don't get it on the perimeter on the east side, it's gone. And what we've seen so far is nothing different. The development we've seen, or I have seen, is nothing different than every other interchange on I-69. It's standard templates, dropping in boxes. It is nothing that is unique or of higher quality than any other I-69 interchange. And that's what we're trying to address.
Well, that would be my thought, you know, my vision for the city or the town to become a city. It's going to become a city at some point. I think we should aim high and have high standards. You know, give a nice homage to the history of the town, the historical element to the town, but also, you know, keep an eye for the future and recognize the growth is coming. But I think focusing on quality of place over quantity would be my focus.
If you look at Eagles, the next right up the road, they didn't do what we're doing here. They didn't have a plan, and that's all mill pieced in together. It's even the 40 acres next to the Loves, there was supposed to be infrastructure to go back behind there. That never happened. There's a main gas line that goes down through the other side. They didn't do any plans. And that's what we're doing now to get ahead, so we don't have the same problem. Then we get landlocked and we can't do what we need to do.
Well, very clearly, I mean, the commissions in Ingalls have realized that anchoring in a truck stop facility stifles the residential development. And when you anchor in supporting entities like that, you know, as soon as they built that in, they've
It was
indicated
over,
boom.
yeah.
I do think there's a risk too to being too restrictive as well, though. And I think there's examples of communities close by to us that were super restrictive, hard to do business with. Like just,
We'll turn it off. I keep going.
they'll just, yeah, they'll go to the next town and they'll get all the cool development. Then they you back filling in with stuff that, like you described.
I can build this extra, that extra.
Yeah.
This is fine.
I had a prominent attorney that's well known, way before any of you guys was probably involved in the town, said 10 years ago, he come here and had a housing thing he wanted to bring and was working on these people. And he said that Pendleton was one of the hardest places to deal with, and they got tired of going back and forth, and they gave up. And, you know, we hate to see those type of opportunities pass us by. Maybe Conan wasn't ready for it then, I don't know.
So I would say, so first of all, the metric that if we're doing this right, does Pendleton still feel like Pendleton with all the growth, right? Whether 10 years from now, or 10,000 people from now, we still feel like Pendleton. That's the metric that we sort of decided. I didn't finish you sort of put this together. It was a joint effort with the chamber back in the Business Association, Main Street, some of the people from the historic Fall Creek. This is what they came up with, not the town. This is what they came up with. So that's been the adopted strategy. So that's the metric. As far as the RDC, under those metrics and those goals, right, the three things: keep the town out of debt, focus on quality, stay ahead of the growth. They should only incentivize those things that the town wants. And as town manager, I will tell you, there's one thing everybody agrees to. There's one thing. Most people disagree what the amenities need to be. Some people want bigger fountains, you know, on that end of the spectrum. And some people want to compete against Carmel on the other end of the spectrum. No, we just need to compete against Pendleton and make sure Pendleton stays Pendleton. But the one thing that the community does want, they want more access to groceries locally. So I would say if there's one thing.
They don't want more people.
They want more people.
That's the problem.
Nice groceries.
They want Chick-fil-A, Super Target, Costco, and a Super Walmart, Kroger, but they don't want any more houses or no more growth or nobody else to move here because I moved here to get in a small town. So you moved here?
Yeah. But so we're not
Every meeting, every comment, it's the same.
yeah. So we're not gonna, so back to the resident mantra, we're not
I'm glad I'm on the RDC.
Can't do it.
Population is coming, you don't need to incentivize it, what you need to incentivize is quality. The one thing that everybody does agree that what they want is more
Amenities.
access to, well, there's only one amenity everybody agrees on, but that's a bigger grocery store.
Probably Chick-fil-A too, if I had. to
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that one, but, so those are, right now, that's the only thing I think you could get an incentive with our very constrained incentive dollars that we have.
But I
You
think
have tools that don't, like the presentation I just
Going
made.
back to Brad's conversation with the feel and the look when you come in, kind of preserving what makes Pendleton special, that historic, and not making everything historic, but that quaintness, you know? And I think that example of the boulevard is perfect, because that's an older type of road, because it has that median,
Yeah.
which I'm assuming, I think we put trees in the middle, those tree lined medians, things like that, that not every community incorporates. So it's those kind of things we're trying to think of, that, I mean, I love the bridge to nowhere.
Me too.
And guess what? When it was only a quarter on the dollar,
Yeah.
it's only half of that quarter now, 12.5 cents
Right.
with inflation in recent years. That, when you pull up, when you're driving on the interstate, doesn't that make an impression?
Yeah.
Sure
You
does.
think historic.
Yeah.
Those kind of elements intertwined throughout. And those are the kind of things we want when you're pulling in at the different corridors.
Yeah, and I think this gateway overlay is gonna be what gets that done.
Timing on their proposal?
I would say probably be ready, but
And that is, we have funding. We have funding for it. Presentation to planning commission on the 7th can
If it's ready.
take a look at it.
If it's ready.
Do we need to light a fire under the consultant that's preparing the proposal?
If you want.
All right. No, that's good.
Thank
Good
you, guys.
conversation. Yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate all you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you just
Did they both
adjourn.
adjourn?
One can. Or Dan, you wanna go ahead?
Yeah, I'll
and
go
adjourn?
ahead. If there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Oh, second, or a motion to adjourn.
All right.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
We always have a